Halo Infinite just had a very impressive showing in late October 2021, just 2 months before launch, giving fans a look into the semi-open world campaign gameplay loop with improved visuals, more freedom and creativity, a sandbox to bring Master Chief into the new generation. Those that wanted to see Halo become its very best under the direction are seeing a new 343 Industries, ready to give fans that classic Halo feel with modernized controls, new adventures, and a more robust offering than we have seen in a decade for this tentpole franchise. 343 is nowhere near done with transparency, showcases, and information coming from the creative team behind this holiday's biggest shooter. They recently spoke out about characters in Halo Infinite, and an enemy fans have feared the most is coming back. This is Colt Eastwood. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Today, we're going to talk about a new update for Halo Infinite from 343, and I'll be using a lot of what they said word for word because they said a lot of specific things about new things coming to the campaign. If you end up enjoying this video, let me know by liking and subscribing to the channel. Hit the bell to be notified of new content, and let's take a very close look at Halo Infinite and its characters. 343 shared some new screenshots of in-engine characters, and after showing the SROM pre-rendered and disclosing it was not in-game, many were cautious of how Halo Infinite's in-game characters and enemies would look like in the final version of the game. 343 stated that some of the high-res render images to be shown are the source models captured in-engine using their development tools and don't necessarily represent exactly how they'll appear when they encounter in-game. Halo Infinite aims to provide compelling AI combatants and enemies. This is addressed by both aesthetic and gameplay. They said, "We want clear reasons around the role of our AI and why a designer would choose to use a grunt versus a brute, jackal, or elite. Each one of these characters should bring a unique experience to combat. This is a differentiation most important when they look at their base level enemies. For example, a brute versus an elite versus a grunt versus a jackal, and so on. Within each of these base characters, they want to create variants that support different roles and gameplay challenges." Another thing they talked about in early production was embracing sci-fi. What this means is Halo Infinite being a sci-fi franchise, they have an opportunity to try different things with different alien species that a lot of other shooters do not. For art style and design, 343 settled around the Halo 3 and Halo Reach timeframe, and then incorporated the Banished aesthetic where it made sense along with the Halo Infinite art direction. They wanted to get back to the legacy designs that made Halo characters iconic, but they didn't want to just up-res the characters. They wanted to add their own flair while staying true to the 20 years of history. We'll use an elite as an example. In Halo 4 and 5, the elites were big and bulky. They ended up scaling them down a bit and giving them more of a sleek look. They wanted them to be fast, agile, and intelligent. They knew this would also be a great contrast to the big hulking brutes, and whether it be a scale of hit reaction, FX feedback, or what an AI says, it should all contextually make sense to the player and help them understand if what they're doing is effective or whether they need to change tactics. The player will experience this in every way, from how they attack, how the armor can be shot off, and the voiceover that the brutes use. Brutes as an enemy are a nice juxtaposition from a character like the Elite that tends to be more composed and tactical. The brutes are all about brute force, and this shows in the gameplay. For example, where an elite might peel off from combat and take cover, a brute will be more likely to charge the player in rage. As you fight the brutes, you'll see all kinds of armor and debris flying off the shoulder pads and thigh pads to helmets shooting across the map. Knowing this, they took care and design in the armors in such a way they designed the brute's tech suit with various attachment points with armor plates that could be shot off, so that by the time you finish off a brute, he would pretty much be naked and bare. This is why they gave Craig the full body tech suit. Players who look hard enough will still be able to find some evidence of Craig in Halo Infinite. 343 said, "We try to drive AI combatant and character creation from a gameplay need as much as possible. We will look for a role that we are missing or is underrepresented and we think would be interesting to fight from a player perspective. We talk about what will make this character unique from all other AI combatants and try to develop what we would often refer to as a character's special sauce. If a new character did not have the special sauce and was just making an analog for an existing character in the game, there isn't a lot of justification for making that new character. For example, there aren't a lot of characters in Halo that put the player back on their heels. And the Elite Zealot is a good example, but you don't see them a lot, which is part of their appeal. So we look at that and say, are there other characters that can fill a similar role? Should we add more? These discussions ultimately lead to things like the Brute Berserker, which fills a gameplay need and is strong fit for the Brute's aggressive personality. Having enemies that sporadically show up in the campaign that will get you fearful or force hesitation is a great pacing remedy for a semi-open world. Narrative characters can be a little different, where they are driven more from the story need as opposed to a gameplay need. The Pilot is a good example of where his role fills many narrative needs but is much lighter on the gameplay side of things. The same amount of diligence and rigor goes into making these narrative characters a reality. There has been a lot rebuilt from the ground up for Halo Infinite in terms of AI behavior that absolutely takes the evolved sandbox and more open gameplay into consideration. For example, those new fusion coils the player can grab and throw can also be thrown by brutes. At times, a brute may even toss a grunt at the player. Another focus is effectiveness of things like new equipment versus characters. The evolution of the sandbox has given the player more options in combat. For example, the grapple shot will pull you to a brute, be deflected by a hunter, and not attached to a jackal, but will pop their shield, so the side to the player can get damage onto the body. Another evolution that may surprise players is some of the smarter AI will upgrade their weapon, when possible, by grabbing a better weapon off a rack, the ground, or even a grunt mule. The more open nature of the combat also meant the engineering team had to do a lot of work on behaviors and systems to account for 360 degrees of semi-open world combat, so the player still feels like Master Chief and can wade into combat without feeling overwhelmed. With the bigger, more open combat spaces, they wanted to maintain that Halo feel, which means allowing the player to be aggressive and remain on the offensive, as opposed to feeling like they're playing a cover shooter. In the Halo fiction, they looked at different armors as being in line with function, as well as aesthetic distinction of rank on the battlefield. With the Banished playing a huge part in this game, as well as sticking to a legacy pillar, they knew they didn't want every character or enemy to be outfitted in the Banished red and silver. They still wanted to have yellow grunts, blue elites running around Zeta Halo. They struck a balance by keeping those legacy color schemes while putting in Banished armor sets here and there. One of 343's favorite new enemies is the Brute Captain or Officer. His usage of jetpack leads to tons of unique and fun combat situations. Aesthetically, he also looks menacing with fire shooting out of his back, and it's super satisfying to blow up their jetpack and take them out. Head of Creative for Halo Infinite, Joseph Staten, asks, do you want to invest in your threat sensor to improve your reconnaissance capability before executing a stealthier base assault? Do you prefer to jump in with your shield core to enable a more tank-like, smash the gate and danger be damned approach? Maybe the grapple shot is your priority to maximize freedom of movement and manipulation of battlefield objects like fusion coils. All of these decisions are more than just fine by us, because Halo Infinite is a game that always does its best to say yes to you and the choices you want to make. And that includes the choice to launch a perfectly good warthog full of newly liberated Marines safely off the side of a mountain. Halo Infinite is looking very promising, and the team has been working on every detail to bring this world into current consoles and to shine on Xbox Series consoles and PC. One of the most important pillars of the Halo experience is gameplay, player-led combinations, and hard-hitting combat among all skill levels. The multiplayer not covered here is even more ambitious, with several modes to challenge players and create a massively popular competitive environment. The campaign, which will carve out the feel and impact of Halo Infinite, is looking like a robust, varied experience where players will have a wholly different experience as they experiment with different equipment and test the AI of the enemy combatants. More to come on Halo Infinite very soon right here on this channel, and soon in November for the anniversary. This is Colt Eastwood. Thanks for checking out this video. Today we showed a ton of Halo combat just from the campaign. And looking at 2020 and 2021, I've noticed that Halo Infinite feels a lot like Doom. That combat looks really, really good. I'm also really excited about the improvements they've done to the enemies we'll be fighting in Halo Infinite and the way the game will look visually, which it needed that improvement so much, which we talked about in my last video. If you ended up enjoying this video, let me know by liking and subscribing to the channel. If you want to further support what I'm doing, you can join the Patreon or become a channel member, and those things will get you early access and giveaway merch every month on the channel. Also, XNC Podcast is a weekly show I do on Monday nights. There we'll be talking more in depth about what is going on in the industry and what we have to look forward to this holiday. But I want to know what you're looking forward to most about Halo Infinite. What do you think of new Craig? Are you excited to see him several times? Will we see him maybe just once? But let me know in the comment section. And while you're there, remember, be nice.